Jay Leno's extending an invitation.
Let's talk about cars.
He's a man who knows hot rods.
Hot rod, I guess, is a modification well beyond standard.
He has plenty of those.
This is our turbocharged M47 patent tank engine hot rod. This would be like a pocket hot rod.
Jay's original hot rod needs an engine repair, and that motor is the world's first 572.
572? That's pretty big.
It's broken.
And the big dogs are gonna fix it.
I blame Jay for it because he was behind the wheel when it broke, so therefore he broke it.
Maybe I was getting on it or something.
Stick around.
Important part of hot rodding, arm out the window.
This is Hot Rod TV. If you're a car guy, you wonder how he chooses what to drive today. His selection is enormous.
First of all, let me say it's great to be here on Hot Rod TV because, see, when I do my TV show, I have to wear like makeup and like a suit, and they fix my hair and they do all that stupid show business stuff. And see, this show, not only do they not have the budget for it, I don't have to do it, and I feel glad that I don't have to do it. But let's talk about cars.
And more specifically, Leno wants to talk about hot rods. Jay knows that hot rods come in all shapes, sizes, makes, and models. And he also knows that one definition does not fit all.
Well, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. This, for example, would be, I think, a factory hot rod. You all know, of course, the Mustang came out April 17th, 1964. I was there at the showroom. I got my hot dog and my donut, and the guy pulled the sheet down, and ooh, they revealed the car. They don't do that anymore.
This Shelby GT350 is a legendary car.
So Shelby, as you know the story, did the whole GT350. Took a Mustang, took out the back seat so he could go racing with it. 350, as I'm sure you know, comes from how many feet it was from Shelby's office allegedly to the building. He counted off 350 feet and said, let's call it a GT350.
By the way, this ride is not a clone.
This is car number 120. This is a very early car, battery in the trunk, fiberglass hood. Wonderful car to drive. Something else that was popular back in the day were these redline tires. The car that was modified by someone other than the factory, who was also a manufacturer, Shelby, so I think we can call that a hot rod.
Nearby, there's a hot rod with a damaged engine. It's a motor that also makes this ride a certified muscle car.
But of all the muscle cars, this one's probably my favorite. This is my baby. I've had this car since 1972. I bought it out of a magazine called The Recycler here in Los Angeles for $350. It's a 55 Buick Roadmaster. We did a full restoration on it, and we did some, I call, tasteful modifications. We didn't mess with the body or the style of the car. We put a 572 big block in it, C5 Corvette suspension, front and back disc brakes. And because we had the big Corvette disc brakes, we had to make 17-inch wheels.
Jay's baby has a little issue.
All right, but let's get to the nightmare part here. What happened with this one is, essentially we blew a head gasket. It's a 572 big block, the very first one, serial number 001, the very first engine. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna pull the engine out, we're gonna place the head gaskets, we'll dyno it, and get this baby back on the road.
With a great deal of care, Jay gets the Buick into the work area. He's soon joined by automotive expert Bernard Euclid.
It's broken. I blame Jay for it because he was behind the wheel when it broke, so therefore he broke it. We don't have a lot of room to work in the engine compartment, so we'll just pull the motor out and do it in the engine room. And that'll give us an opportunity to kind of look at things, all of it. Okay, we're going to start this assembly here. Of course, we're going to start at the top of the motor and work our way down.
If this is your first visit to Leno's garage, a few things are already clear. This is a fully functioning, fully staffed automotive facility, servicing one of the world's most impressive, horsepower-driven collections. But don't think for a moment that this is a museum.
Neat thing about Jay and his whole collection is that everything is being used. And I expect he will break some things. You know, I always say he breaks it, but he doesn't really.
Stick around. We're getting to the bottom of this 572, and we'll see even more of Leno's incredible collection. All that and more right here on Hot Rod TV. At Jay Leno's Big Dog Garage, his 55 Buick needs work. Jay drives his cars hard, and that can often lead to a busy repair crew.
Hasn't had an easy life either.
Well, it hasn't had an easy life. No, it hasn't had an easy life. That's a great motor, 572. I remember when 283 I thought was big, when the 265 came out. Oh, 283, and then it went to 327, then it went to 350. Of course, this is not based on the small block, but 572, that's pretty big.
Jay knows a thing or two about big power. Next up in his stable of muscle cars is a hot rod that dates back to World War II. Kind of.
You've seen our giant hot rod before. This is our turbocharged M47 patent tank engine hot rod. Of course, a hot rod doesn't always have to have 4 wheels. I think this would be a modern interpretation of a hot rod.
The Boss Hoss is for the motorcyclist who wants to be driving his car on 2 wheels.
Now, the Boss Hoss normally came with a 327. Well, that's like the wife's bike. And this has got a 502 big block in it. It puts out about 500 horsepower. It rides really nice. It drives really well. It's really comfortable.
So here's a question. What do you do if you want a hot rod, but all you have is a Ford Festiva?
Well, you take the 4-cylinder engine out, you throw that away. Then you take a Taurus Show V6 and you put it in the back seat. You need a little extra power. You got your nitrous right here. In 1989, when we built this thing, with the nitrous, it was about 325 horse, something like that, 220 stock. It meets all emissions. The engine is basically stock, but because you've taken it out of the Taurus, you've dropped literally 1,000 pounds of weight. You put it in the back for good traction. And you can't quite do wheel stands with it, but it comes close. Another version of a hot rod.
Let's go from a pocket rocket to the reinvention of a classic.
But this, I think, is my ultimate hot rod.
It's a 66 Olds Toronado, but it's hardly stock.
On a normal car, this would be a hubcap, but this is a solid wheel so we can get the big Corvette disc brakes underneath it. I wanted to build a hot rod that was different than any other hot rod that I had seen around.
They did that by making a front-wheel drive businessman's car into a rear-wheel drive twin-turbo 1,000 horsepower monster. It's a tire shredder in a tux.
This car is about 600 pounds lighter than stock, even with all this extra horsepower, because there's a lot of aluminum in it. I think it's a really good-looking car.
And by the way, beyond collecting and rebuilding, Leno's giving one-time wrecks a whole new life.
I'd like to think by putting some value into these cars, we're saving them from the crusher.
Well, the crusher won't be seeing these rides anytime soon. Around here, there's one great car after the other, and some of them are certified hot rods.
It's not really a hot rod. This is a 1910 Stanley steam car, but in this day they were hot rods. They were pretty quick.
Jay's thinking about taking one of the steamers out for a cruise today. To do that, he'll need to get the kettle boiling. Before long, one of those classic cars is all fired up. So with a little steam at his disposal, Jay's ready to roll. Don't go away. Jay's garage is filled with hot rods, and we're getting that 572 on one heck of a dyno. So don't go anywhere. At Jay Leno's Big Dog Garage, the world's first 572 engine is undergoing a major operation. Jay has a lot of cool things in this place, but they're all put aside as his baby prepares for a trip to Dr. Dyno.
We need a dyno that will accept different bell housings and different hookups. And the Superfloor is going to do that real well for us.
Now you call it diversification, HR, human resources. We're diverse, we have a diverse engine workforce.
Remember, this engine is historic.
This 572 we have here is the original. It's a prototype before they went into production with the motor. So It's a pretty cool motor, so that's why we want to fix it rather than just put another one in.
Jay and Bernard suspect a blown head gasket, and soon their suspicions seem to be realized.
If you look inside this rocker cover, you can see the oil inside of it is kind of like chocolatey, milkshake looking thing. This is an indication that it had water going into the oil, which we suspected.
With a gasket problem, the fluids in the engine ended up everywhere.
We've got a little bit of coolant and a little bit of water in it. Well, this is not looking real pretty here. You see how this gasket is kind of pushed aside. It should be straight up and down.
As more parts come off, more clues are uncovered, but Bernard's still searching for the major damage.
What do you think? Well, I don't see anything real obvious at the moment, so.
Now, can you see where the gasket is blown?
We have a little bit of evidence back here where
Okay.
you can see some traces getting into that cylinder.
So far, it looks like good news.
So it wasn't my fault after all. Boy, those are big pistons.
They're huge.
Look at the size of those pistons.
They're huge.
Hilarious.
As Bernard continues on the engine, Jay shows us hot rods of all shapes and sizes. This next one is a rare machine, the very model of elegant Swiss design.
I think this would be a hot rod. This is called a Monteverdi.
And it's not something you'll see every day.
And what this is a Swiss-designed chassis with Italian-designed body with Chrysler 440 running gear. It's basically a road runner that went to college in Europe.
Well, when Jay was in college, he was a car fanatic, and even before that.
You know, I was never a big sports guy. I didn't really watch the Super Bowl. I didn't really watch baseball. But when Ford won Le Mans, oh, that was like unbelievable to me. The Ford would actually beat Ferrari.
And Jay has a symbol of that history right here. It's the Ford GT.
This is the very first one, or the first customer car. They built 10 cars for the family. The 11th car was auctioned for charity, and I was the very first customer.
Think it can't be more rare? Think again.
The car has been signed by everybody that built it.
This is a version of the original racing machine. It's a car that Jay's been following for a very long time.
I thought they'd done a wonderful job. It's just a little bit wider than it was originally. And you know something, if I could just be less than a little bit wider than I was in high school, that would be great. I'm a lot wider than I was in high school, so they've done a better job with this than I did on me.
It's in exclusive collections and built as replicas. One look, and it's easy to see why Jay's not alone when it comes to the love of the great GT.
I guess it qualifies as a muscle car, but it's a well-balanced muscle car that actually stops and handles, because most muscle cars don't really stop or go around corners very well, but this one does all of that.
And there's even more cars to see, along with the rehabilitation of Jay's history-making 572, all coming up on Hot Rod TV, so don't go away. Big Dog Garage is where Jay Leno has an amazing car collection and repair shop. The 572 from his beloved Buick needs help, and Bernard's just the guy to do it. As the engine comes apart, Bernard finds the problems, realizing that maybe Jay's driving wasn't the culprit.
No, it does not look like it was my fault.
It seems that there are gasket issues, and once they're solved, Bernard wants to get this engine on a dyno. But first things first.
This is why I like aluminum cylinder heads. You can actually carry the darn things. So we're gonna use our BioCircle tank here to clean this stuff up. This will at least remove all the oil. This is the first time that we've had any sort of an environmentally safe cleaner that actually works. This is my patented sanding stick. You take a flat piece of wood, put some emery cloth over it, and it works really well to clean up flat surfaces.
So as Leno's Chevy Big Block gets a bath, we're back with Jay's collection. Hot rods that are truly off the beaten path, like this Mopar.
You know, when you talk about Hemi cars, people always instinctively think of the 60s, you know, the Challengers and the Roadrunners, but there were Hemis before that were really, really quick, and they were sleepers, and this is one of them. This is a 53 Dodge It's got the 241 Red Ram Hemi, had a 3-speed stick with an overdrive on it.
And to truly time travel,
That was a safety seat when I was a kid. You put a kid in that now, and child services will take the child away from you. She's all stock. She's a little tired. We're gonna pull this motor out and go through it. You gotta have a family car. You tell the wife, honey, sure it's a Hemi, but it's a family car. It'll come in handy.
now that's a cool Mopar. And here's a car that will satisfy both Chevy and Ford guys.
It's a 32 Ford, which actually it's on a Chevy frame. This was built for SEMA. It's got a Z06 Corvette engine in it, all Chevy parts.
It's called the 32 Bowtie Deuce Roadster and packs a hot rod size horsepower rating of over 580.
This is just the sort of a classic example of a hot rod, although it does have a top and roll-up windows. It's got the proper 6-speed.
And this ride can take the long distances, having been a member of that massive caravan known as the Hot Rod Power Tour.
It's really, really quick, and it's a lot of fun to drive, and I think it's a good-looking car.
The 572 reminds us that hot rods are fast.
Obviously, a hot rod is usually something built in somebody's garage with a lot of spare parts. This isn't an example of that. This is a kind of money, no object sort of deal. But in that sense, it's not a true hot rod, because the real hot rodders went to the junkyard and used what they could, try to find a Franklin steering box and some other parts. And it's not a flathead, of course, but it makes up for it by being really, really fast, so that kind of settles it.
Okay, we'll put the carburetor on, we'll put some nuts on it, and we'll be ready to go to West Tech.
The 572 is finally going to get its dyno test, and David at West Tech is ready to make it happen.
Hi, Bernard. Thanks for coming out.
Hey, David.
So the beauty of the dyno is that we can simulate exactly what's going on in the vehicle as far as load. You know, we test a lot of different style engines, and single 4-barrel engines like this are really the simplest to test.
West Tech can check out any and all engines, running them until they have every bit of information possible. If there's a problem with a motor, there's no doubt that it can be found here.
We've got to line up the input shaft with the drive plate, so that way we're coupling the dyno to the engine.
We'll see how Bernard did as the engine gets a top-notch dyno test. Coming up next.
Hey, I'm happy if it runs.
Bernard at Jay Leno's Big Dog Garage rebuilt the 572 engine from Jay's 55 Buick Roadmaster. Now Bernard needs to get the engine checked out on a dyno. Superflow dynos check out everything from Indy cars to racing boats.
What we prefer to use is a Morse cable style throttle system, which gives us the ability, it's a positive cable that we can actually have control to not just open the throttle but return it as well.
What sets us apart is not only the experience we have with the dynamometer and our control of the engine so that we can give you good repeatable results, but it's also the data acquisition and control system.
All we're going to do right now is put water in the thing, fill up the cooling system, make sure that we've got good circulation, no leaks, and then we'll be ready to fire. But right now we're just going to warm it up and make sure everything's safe and there's no leaks, and just kind of run through a basic break-in. That was almost too easy.
After a couple preliminary dyno pulls and an adjustment to the air-fuel ratios, they're almost ready.
Ultimately, what we're looking for is just the highest peak power number right now, seeing if the air-fuel ratio correction will help that out a little bit.
Okay, time to see if this big dog's gonna roar. $650 horsepower? Yep, that's a hot rod.
I think it's safe to say you'll be changing more tires than motors from now on.
Absolutely.
Another pull? Why not? This big block's loving every minute of it. She can handle the dyno, but can she handle the boss? 572 is back home, and it's time for an engine shakedown, Leno style.
2 miles on it now since we put it back in. I think that's enough of a break-in. Not everybody has access to a dyno, obviously, but if you build an engine, find somebody that's got one, especially a Superflow, and just put it through its paces on the dyno. You'll break it in, you'll bring it up to temperature, everything will kind of get in sync, then put it in the car, then do burnouts.
Leno's first hot rod is back in action and better than ever.
Manly horn. Oh, in a real hot rod, you have to hang your arm out the window. Important part of hot rodding, arm out the window. But it's kind of cool driving the same car for 34 years. See, this is like recycling. You know, I think a lot of people say, oh, aren't you polluting? But you know something? If a car was built once, if you drive the same car for 30 years, oh, sure, you're not going to get the same gas mileage. But don't forget, there's no lead in the fuel anymore, so you're not polluting as much. So in a lot of ways, driving an old car for 15, 20, even 30 years might actually be better for the environment than buying a new car every 5 or 6 years. Seems okay, Bernard.
They're working okay?
Seems all right, yeah. We did some break-in miles. We did 2.2 miles before we put our foot in it, so.
Well, that's the beauty on the dyno. You
That's right.
get it broken in, you don't have to take it easy.
That's
You
right.
can
Well, I
go on
wanted to
it
go at least 2.2 miles before we put our
you
foot in.
hammered it.
You want to be sensible.
Just another day at Big Dog Garage. We'll catch you tonight, Jay, and we'll see you next time, right here on Hot Rod TV.